Hi, and welcome back to this series on getting started with meditation. Let's begin with a short meditation. So as always, we begin by settling into the posture, really taking a few minutes to make sure that the body is comfortable, whether we're sitting in a chair, or lying down, or standing up. However you're choosing to sit right now, just making sure the body is comfortable. Getting all that fidgeting out of the way, making any adjustments, and once we find that physical comfort throughout the body, setting a strong mental intention to really settle in and stay still, but in a way that feels relaxed, not uptight or strained. Relaxed, comfortable, and still. Once you've found that comfortable stillness, paying attention to the way it feels to breathe right now. And if it feels right to do so, maybe taking a few really deep, full, refreshing breaths. Noticing the relaxing sensations of the exhale. Allowing those feelings of relaxation to settle you into the posture. Anchor the mind to the present moment. Remembering you have some choice over how the breath is right now. If the breath doesn't feel totally comfortable, you can notice what's uncomfortable about it and make a different choice. Breathe a little bit differently. Giving yourself a minute to find the comfortable way of breathing. And just like the posture, to settle into that comfortable way of breathing. As the breath becomes more and more comfortable, noticing precisely those sensations of comfort about the breath. What are those physical feelings you can notice with your attention that let you know that the breath is comfortable now? And in this way of tuning the attention to the sensations of the breath, we can tune our attention to the field of physical sensations in general. And just notice how the body feels, especially any sensations associated with the movement of the breath. But any physical sensations at all throughout the body. Noticing the whole field of physical sensations. It can be helpful to simply notice in your mind this space, the physical space surrounding your body, within which your body exists. If you're visually inclined, it can be helpful to think of an egg shape or a sphere shape surrounding the whole body. You're paying attention to everything inside that space, everything around the body and everything throughout the body. Any physical sensations you can notice at all. Just tuning the mind to that space, noticing the rhythmic movement of the breath within that space, as well as any other sensations taking place. This whole field of physical sensations within which the breath is moving in and moving out. In this way, we can use the awareness of physical sensations as a steady anchor to the present moment. If thoughts about the past come up, or thoughts anticipating the future come up, we can remind ourselves simply to tune into this space. What can I feel right now, right here, in this space? Over and over again, gently redirecting our attention to notice the bare, sensate, physical reality of this moment. So if you've been trying to establish a meditation practice, you've probably noticed a handful of useful things by now. Some of what you've noticed may include feelings of being overwhelmed in meditation, especially when the mind is really active and lots of thoughts are going on. It can be difficult sometimes to feel like you have a clear picture of what's going on. Sometimes it's just too chaotic to keep track of physical sensations as well as thoughts and feelings and everything going on. Just an overabundance of information going on. And that can be a bit of a struggle in meditation, especially in the beginning. It's helpful to remember that the goal of meditation is not to stop thoughts. The goal of meditation is not to stop thoughts. When the mind is overactive and there's a lot of information moving through it and going on, rather than resisting that movement, rather than feeling frustrated or feeling like we're failing in some fundamental way to meditate because there's a lot of activity in the mind, we can recognize that what's needed is not to eliminate the activity, but to categorize it in useful ways. And so if you feel overwhelmed in meditation, and you feel like you're frustrating or struggling, one of the quickest and simplest ways to get back on track is to establish a couple of simple categories for that moment in meditation. If it's a lot of mental content, a lot of mental chatter, a lot of stories and ideas and memories and things going on in the mind, a simple two-category system of helpful or not helpful, or you could think of it as skillful or unskillful. Take all of the thoughts that are helpful, all the thoughts that help you feel more at ease, feel more calm, feel more attentive and comfortable. Put those into the skillful category, the helpful category. Any other thoughts that feel stressful, thoughts that feel overwhelming, thoughts that increase your feelings of stress or anxiety, for the period of meditation, put those into the unhelpful or unskillful category and focus your attention on the helpful side and encourage yourself to let go of your interest or your curiosity in the unhelpful side. Another thing that can be helpful, especially with the unhelpful thoughts or the unskillful thoughts, if a stressful pattern of thought keeps coming up again and again in the mind in meditation, and you keep coming back over and over again, you can remind yourself you don't have to finish that thought before you get back to the meditation. With mental content, it can be especially difficult to do this, but it's an important reminder. When we get caught in a thought, sometimes we have a tendency to just want to see it play out. And then once it's over, once we've played through that whole story in the mind, then we can get back to the meditation. If you're in the middle of a meditation, remind yourself, I don't have to finish this thought before I get back to the meditation. I can just come back to the breath. I can drop that thought. Its echoes can continue to play out in the background if it wants to. But I don't have to continue feeding it with my curiosity or my interest. Try to push all of your interest and curiosity back towards the helpful or the skillful side of the thoughts, and especially towards the object of the meditation you're going for. So simple categories can help you keep track of what otherwise feels like a very overwhelming experience sometimes in meditation. And this leads to a very common technique in the meditation world called noting. We are very language-based creatures. We have a lot of language going on in the mind all the time. And rather than feeling frustrated by the fact that there are voices in the head, that there are a bunch of conversations we're imagining, and rather than trying to make the language stop and just stay with the sensations, we can use the language to stay with the sensations. So noting is a technique where every time you notice a sensation, you give it a one-word label. And you can be very, very specific with this, or you can be very, very general with this. I've found in my own practice that if I'm trying to be too specific, I'm trying to be too precise with the language or the note that I apply to each sensation, I can get kind of caught up in that effort of trying to find the right label for each sensation. The goal of the note is to help you simply and precisely, quickly stay with sensations one after the other. So, for example, if I'm sitting in meditation, I'm noticing physical sensations. What are the different kinds of sensations I'm noticing? I can think buzzing, throbbing, itching, coolness, warmth, dryness, soreness. Simple words like that to describe the quality of the sensation, but don't get caught up in any stories about it. Sometimes even that can be a little too busy trying to find the right word for the right sensation. So sometimes it's helpful just to be more general, and just any physical sensation you notice at all, you can think feeling, feeling, feeling. If you notice a sensation of breathing, you can think breathing. And with thoughts, it can be very helpful just to keep the label thinking, thinking. Anytime you notice a thought, say to yourself, hear it in your mind, hear the word thinking, thinking, and then get back to the meditation. This one-word note technique is a very helpful way of staying with the present moment, even in the midst of a bunch of distracting thoughts. So if you're trying to stay with the breath or trying to stay with sensations, it can be like breathing, feeling, feeling, breathing, thinking, returning, breathing, feeling, and you're just trying to keep up that chain of notes over and over again, noticing simply and clearly what this precise moment's experience is like. When you get caught in a story or get caught in a distracting thought, the present moment's experience moves to the background, and in the foreground of your mind is this memory about the past or this anticipation about the future, and you're no longer paying attention clearly and directly to what's happening right here and right now. So it can also be helpful to remember that there's a foreground and a background in the mind. You want to keep in the foreground, in the center of attention, whatever is happening right here, right now, and you want to notice it as clearly as possible. Anything else that's going on, you can allow it to stay in the background without resisting it, without clinging to it, without doing anything about it, and just allowing that energy to play itself out in the background. You don't have to eliminate all of that chatter in order to continue meditating. In fact, meditating in the midst of that chatter is a necessary learning point every person who meditates has to go through. So again, meditation is not about stopping thoughts. It's not about eliminating mental content that we don't like. It's about learning to stay with the present moment's bare reality of experience as clearly and precisely as possible without getting caught up in memories about the past or anticipations about the future. Okay. So noting, that technique of noting one-word labels for different experiences as they occur one after the other, that's the technique I want us to focus on today and ask you to consider trying in your own practice when you're trying to meditate. So noting. We'll end today's session with a second meditation, and I'll try to use this technique of noting to move us through the second meditation. So again, here we go. So settling back into the posture. There's a balance with how much time you should take settling into the posture, but the more you do this, the more you practice meditation in this way, you should be becoming more and more familiar with what kinds of postures work well for you. And so the time spent in the beginning of meditation settling into the posture should get gradually less and less, and it should be easier to find a comfortable way to sit, to take a couple of deep breaths to settle into it, and then to drop into the meditation. So settling the posture, making sure that the body is comfortable, and then supporting that comfort of the body with a comfortable way of breathing. What's the most comfortable way to sit? And what's the most comfortable way to breathe right now? Get those well established. And for this meditation, the primary object I invite you to work with is just sensations that you can notice physically. And to just use one word label to notice those physical sensations. Anytime you notice a sensation, you can say the word body or say the word feeling in your mind. So try to pair the sensation itself, the experience you notice, as quickly as possible right on top of it, mentally noting, mentally labeling with that one word. So the mind should be saying feeling or body as soon as it notices a sensation, over and over again. Of course, there's a variety of sensations going on, but to keep it simple, if you notice the movement of the breath physically, you can say breath or breathing. If you notice a sensation physically that doesn't have anything to do with the breath, you can say body or feeling. So for the most part, it might be feeling, breathing, breathing, feeling, feeling. Anytime thoughts or ideas, memories or anticipations come up in the mind, you can try to assign the label thinking, 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 and see how quickly you can return your attention to the physical sensations. So these three labels, these three categories, feeling, breathing, and thinking, are some synonyms for those words that make more sense to you, that feel more intuitive or more natural. But trying to keep it to just those three bare realities. What physical sensations can I notice and label? What movements of the breath can I notice and label? And are there any thoughts coming up that I could notice and label? Not indulging in any stories, not getting caught, but labeling precisely and clearly thoughts, movements of the breath, and sensations as they occur one after the other. Remembering that you don't have to finish a thought before you return to the meditation. When you get caught, you don't have to finish the thought before you return to the meditation.